Billionaire Richard Branson on Thursday announced that the state of West Virginia has been chosen to host a $500 million certification center.
No! Oh, please, God, no!
A $500 million.
No!
No!
500 million.
I'm only burning my half.
And test track for the Virgin Hyperloop.
Hyperloop moves people and goods in pods through a vacuum tube at speeds exceeding 600 miles per hour and can travel from Pittsburgh to Chicago in 41 minutes.
A super high-speed travel system. The center will be the first U.S. regulatory proving ground for a Hyperloop system designed to whisk floating pods packed with passengers and cargo through vacuum tubes at 600 miles an hour.
Hyperloop will build its new certification center on nearly 800 acres of land across Tucker and Grant counties. The company also says it will use intellectual capital and resources from West Virginia University, Marshall University, and from across the state.
Hello, I'm Congressman Alex Mooney. I'm very pleased West Virginia will be home to the Hyperloop Certification Center. This comes after a competitive national site selection process. There is no better place than West Virginia for high-tech, innovative transportation solutions.
Construction is set to begin in 2022 on the site of a former coal mine in West Virginia. Virgin Hyperloop, which has raised more than $400 million, is among a number of firms racing to launch new high-speed travel systems.
And I'm sure you'll be stunned to find out that they're actually building the Hyperloop Center in probably one of the worst possible places that you could build it in America.
There is no better place than West Virginia for high-tech, innovative transportation solutions.
But hey, let's make this sporting. Let's see if you can pinpoint the exact moment where he proposes what obviously makes West Virginia one of the dumbest places in the country to build a Hyperloop.
American-made technology will be produced right here in West Virginia. Our mountain state can boast of technology, innovation, and the 21st century transportation solutions, all to keep America strong and prosperous.
And he wasn't alone in boasting about building a test center for a high-speed rail network in probably one of the worst places to build it.
Well, thank you, Senator. This is an incredible day for West Virginia. Indeed, it is an incredible day for the world. The vision and technology that our friends at Virgin Hyperloop are developing will benefit us on a global scale. And how wonderful it is that the mountain state will share in its evolution.
And for those who missed it,
our mountain state can boast.
And how wonderful it is that the mountain state will share in its evolution.
Yeah, it's hard enough to build rail lines through mountainous terrain. Even roads can be a challenge. You know what no sane man has ever thought? Mountainous terrain. Now that's the place to build my new certification center for a high-speed rail network.
Yeah, I mean, your state competed with 17 other states. You put your more than your best foot forward, to try to sort of build a really fantastic innovation center in your state. It could make a big difference for the future.
Congratulations on the selection of Tucker County, West Virginia, as a location of the new Hyperloop Certification Center. This is a testament to the hard work of Governor Justice, Senators Capito and Manchin, and others in West Virginia's government, business, and academic communities.
Awesome. So we want to build a Hyperloop test track. Now for this choice, I'm going to assume that building a Hyperloop is actually going to be remarkably easy. Not quite true, as we'll find out, but I'm going to assume that it's going to be easy to do. So all we've got to do is choose a site where we can test the technology. One of the things that a Hyperloop is meant to do is go very fast. And when things are going very fast, it turns out they can't turn corners very easily. It has to go very straight. And that includes not going up and down. So if you don't want to spend most of your time digging tunnels through mountains or hills or building bridges over valleys or gorges, then you'll want somewhere for your test track that is going to be remarkably flat. Thankfully, America is well set up for flat states, as can be easily spotted by the rather straight interstates going through North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas. Of the worst places that you could possibly build a Hyperloop would be, say, for instance, in the Rocky Mountains, because you really want somewhere that's flat. Now, where did they actually build their test site? Their initial test site they built just outside Las Vegas. So if you come outside Las Vegas on this road, come up the side here, and we zoom in, there is their remarkable test track, which is probably the most sophisticated Hyperloop test track in the world. It's not actually saying that much, but that's it. So isn't the most obvious question, why didn't they just extend their test track? Why didn't they just make it out of their current test track and save some money on the construction and moving all the kit and all that sort of thing? Well, in order to just accelerate up at the sort of best accelerations that people will be comfortable with, it's like Ferrari type accelerations, just to get up to 600 miles an hour and get back to rest again takes you about 20 odd kilometers, that sort of distance. And as you can see, there's a bit of a problem that if you go this way out of their test track, there's the test track, there's a mountain range in the way. And to tunnel through a mountain range like that is going to take you years and cost quite a lot of money. So why didn't you extend it the other way? Well, again, it's the same problem. First of all, there's a road in the way. And then also there's another mountain range in the way. So you can't very easily do anything in terms of expanding this remarkable Hyperloop test track facility out in the middle of the desert. And just to throw it all into harsh relief again, that's the Hyperloop test track, and that's one of Las Vegas airports. And where's the other airport? There's the other airport. So the Hyperloop's kind of like a tiny fraction of the size of an airport. Anyway, so they said, right, we're not going to build our Hyperloop out in the desert. We're going to build it in the second worst place to build it, which is in the Appalachian Mountains. So a long time ago, the Appalachians were like the Rockies. They were a large mountain range, and eventually they got eroded down, and now they're more like hills. But it is still a very pronounced, very hilly region that is almost the worst place that you can possibly think to build a Hyperloop track, and that's exactly where they chose to build their Hyperloop test track.
It is truly a wonderful day for West Virginia, our nation, and the world. Marshall University is honored to be a part of this global announcement. It's so exciting to be here today, not just to help Hyperloop develop and test this technology and to celebrate the economic benefits to the state, but to also realize that we are at the gates of history.
So if we actually come down to this, I mean, you get a feeling almost immediately just by how straight the roads are, that cars on roads go up to about 60 miles per hour. And if that's the best curves that you're comfortable doing in the car, the Hyperloop has to be, the curvature that you're going to get on the Hyperloop has to be 10 times less than the curvature you would get on a road. And so, yeah, in order to make the test track here, it doesn't really matter which way you put the test track down, it's going to be almost entirely bridges and tunnels.
And so we want to couple this with our tourism industry, our educational institutions, the research and development that comes with the technology to create a whole new way to travel in this country.
Which is the worst, the most expensive place to build a Hyperloop.
My name is David McKinley, and my congressional district includes Tucker and Grant County, the new home to the Virgin Hyperloop Certification Center.
Especially when you consider, you just sort of scroll out into the flatlands, doesn't really matter which way you go. You get onto the plains, and all of a sudden, wow, the roads get remarkably straight. Yeah, like, say, around Indianapolis or Columbus. But no, they had to build their Hyperloop test track.
It's a future, it's a vision, and that's what the Virgin Hyperloop folks have done by choosing to build the Hyperloop Certification Center in Tucker and Grant County.
Well, the Hyperloop Certification Center will be in the state of West Virginia.
But today is a day to celebrate Virgin Hyperloop coming to West Virginia. It is validation for West Virginia in so many ways. It is a dream.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that the reason they're building it here is because people would give them the land.
And to Virgin Hyperloop, the Western Pocahontas property team welcomes you to West Virginia.
One nice thing about mountains like this is the land's not very valuable. Unfortunately, it's also one of the worst places to build a high-speed rail test line.
Construction is set to begin in 2022 on the site of a former coal mine in West Virginia.
So you want to sell me magic beans?
I'm Governor Jim Justice. You know, it is an incredible day for West Virginia. And I say to all my team and all those that put in all the licks to make this happen, we did it. We did it. And so we're honored beyond belief. We're proud beyond belief. We welcome Hyperloop to West Virginia, to Grant and Tucker County. Absolutely, we welcome them with the most open arms, and we're so proud of this great, great day, not only for West Virginia, but for our nation and for the world.
It's also very humbling for me because you took a risk on our state, my home state. It's something that I think can result in inclusive jobs, can really give the state momentum to become a startup state in so many ways. And Hyperloop represents that dream for us in so many different aspects.
At first, there were dirt roads. Then, there were cobblestone streets. And then came asphalt highways, a whole network. Now, there is something better. Something so innovative, it can help save the planet from global warming. Solar roadways.
That can carry people and cargo, and on top of all of that, is environmentally friendly.
A vision of a system that will do that without polluting the air.
The HCC will create thousands of new jobs in West Virginia. Engineering, manufacturing, operation, and maintenance jobs will all boost the local economy here in West Virginia.
I am so excited to welcome Virgin Hyperloop to West Virginia. This partnership will have an incredible impact on our economy, creating modern jobs in everything from construction and infrastructure to technology and development.
Thousands of new jobs, engineering, maintenance, and other related fields.
I'm kind of broke, bruh. Yeah, no kidding. The economy is in the toilet. Do you realize how many thousands of jobs this could create and sustain? Talk about a hypodermic adrenaline shot to the heart of the manufacturing and infrastructure sector. And it pays for itself. They're solar freaking roadways.
Center to West Virginia is going to create literally thousands of jobs and thousands upon thousands of opportunities for West Virginia.
Solar roadways is an innovative solution of smart panels.
It is truly about way more than just West Virginia or our nation. It is about transforming transportation. It is an idea. It is America at its best.
It generates clean, efficient energy, reducing our dependence on fossil fuels.
It will enable us to diversify and revitalize our state, building off of our energy heritage, establishing us as a hub for modern innovation and creating new opportunities for success in the 21st century economy.
I believe this project is to ground transportation as the moon landing is to space exploration.
This partnership will bring West Virginia to the cutting edge of transportation solutions and create American technology that we can export throughout the world. Virgin Hyperloop, welcome to West Virginia.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I actually feel pretty sorry for them at this point. After all, the Hyperloop is going to do for the economy of West Virginia what solar freaking roadways did for the economy of Idaho.
This is exactly the kind of over-the-horizon thinking that has brought Idaho's own solar roadways to national and world prominence.
Which was another brilliant project, which even if it wasn't such a stupid idea, of putting really fragile solar panels in probably the worst place to put them, they then built their solar road installation, which has never actually seen any road traffic, in probably the worst place you could build a solar installation in America. But on the bright side, when the dust has settled on their $500 million money-burning party, we will get a single new word out of this. The hyperpath. Kind of like a psychopath, but with a dedication for believing seductive hype over, say, for instance, cold, hard reality. Cold, hard reality like this. Right, so we're going to take a look at some numbers of what they can possibly hope to do with this test track that they're building. Now, the test track that they're building is going to be about 10 kilometers long, which is about 6 miles. The numbers that we're going to be using as our frame of reference for acceleration is going to be sports cars. So a fairly decent performance car will do 0 to 60 miles per hour. That's about the same as 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, very similar numbers, in about 5 seconds. And a real top performance car will do it in about 3 seconds. Right? It's pretty decent acceleration. Speed of sound, which is their aspirational goal for the Hyperloop, is about 600 miles per hour, which is about 300 meters per second. So if you want to convert miles per hour into meters per second, you roughly divide it by 2. These numbers are all the same. 0 to 60 miles per hour, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, or 0 to 30 meters per second. But meters per second is the one that we're going to be using because it turns out it's the most useful. We're going to start at 0 seconds and then we're going to go forward to 1 second. We've got a velocity of 0 at the beginning, and this is going to be velocity in meters per second, and this is going to be the velocity in miles per hour, just so we've all got a reference. And so whatever this one is, it's roughly times by 2-ish. Our acceleration is going to be 5 meters per second squared. Okay, so our velocity after 1 second is whatever it was previously plus our acceleration number, which means that if we roll this forwards for 6 seconds, after 6 seconds, we're doing 30 meters per second, which is about 60 miles per hour. So this is roughly our performance car type numbers. So how far have we traveled in this acceleration run? Is going to be distance. Initially it's going to be 0, and then after 1 second we've traveled the distance that we did previously plus an extra 5 meters, and then we traveled an extra 10 meters in the next second, and so on and so forth. So after we've traveled our 6 seconds, we've actually traveled about 100 meters. So it's 100 meters like in the Olympics, that sort of thing. Cool. And that's only got us up to 1/10 of our top speed. So we need to keep accelerating like that for another 10 times. So it's going to be about 60 seconds in order to get up to not 60 miles per hour, but 600 miles per hour. So let's see how far we will have traveled by the time that happens. So we need to scroll down here till our speed gets up to 600 miles per hour at 300 meters per second. And by that time, we've traveled about 10 kilometers. How long was their test track again? It was 10 kilometers. So they can just about reach maximum velocity by the time they smash into the end of their tube. that's probably not going to work out so well. And that's using a pretty decent 0 to 60 in 5-6 seconds, that sort of thing. Cool. So what's the best speed that we could get in this tube before we have to slow down? So the tube's 10 kilometers long. So once we get up to 5 kilometers in the middle of the tube, that's when we've got to start slowing down again, assuming that we brake at the same speed we accelerate. So after 5 kilometers, which is about here, we're going about 400 miles per hour. Okay. So the best speed that they could possibly get in this tube, assuming they have sports car type accelerations, is about the speed of a maglev, a regular maglev train. It's not entirely certain you're going to get any benefit from putting all of this in the vacuum tube at that speed. In other words, you might be better off just running it out in the open air. You're not going insane speeds. So, great. Let's bump up their acceleration, not to just sports car type numbers, but to super sports car type numbers, where they're now doing 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. There's your miles per hour. But the nice thing about accelerating quickly is you don't need quite as much distance. So now, rather than doing 0 to 60 and covering about 100 meters, again, like the Olympics, you're now looking at 60 meters. Right, cool. So now we reach the speed of sound after about 5 kilometers. So this would be possible. If you have the ultimate muscle car type acceleration, you can just about accelerate, hit peak speed in the middle of the tube, and slow down again by the end of the tube. Of course, if anything goes wrong, you may well unhealthily smash into the end of the tube. But this is just to put it into perspective how little you might hope to achieve with a 10-kilometer long tube, which is why my reckoning was they were going to have sports car type accelerations. That means you needed about 10 kilometers just to get up to speed and 10 kilometers to slow down again.
To make sure that we're not just competitive, because, West Virginians always like to compete, but you know what we really like to do? We really like to win. Don't we, Governor? We really like to win.
Get used to disappointment.
Put simply, if you were pursuing this seriously, 20 kilometers is probably the shortest track that you would consider. In reality, they're making one half that size. And I'll bet folding money that they never get it working as promised. And I'll tell you why. The prospect of just building a vacuum chamber this size is knee-weakening. Look, let's take their test track and do some pump-down estimates on it. Their tube, which they're very proud of, is some 3.3 meters in diameter. And it means it's got a cross-section of about 10 meters squared-ish. And let's say their airlock, just their airlock, is some 10 meters long. That means that it's got a volume of about 100 cubic meters. Now, that's just the airlock, bear in mind. So let's take a look at some fairly heavy-duty pumps and get some pump-down estimates for that. Well, this is a big pump, probably overkill for the application here. Well, maybe. It's a scroll pump. That means it's dry. You're not going to get any contamination of oil into your Hyperloop, which is maybe important. I mean, for certain, if you wanted to go for the bargain basement version of this, or eBay or something, you can get something that'll deliver a similar pumping rate and similar final vacuum for about 1/10 of the price, about $300, that sort of thing. But it still runs at about 1 kilowatt. But this is the sort of thing that we would use in the lab. It's got high capacity, it'll pump down to a better vacuum than is needed for the Hyperloop, but it's a benchmark. So something like this costs about $5,000, and it pumps 17 cubic meters per hour. Cool, so for our system, it's got a volume of about 100 cubic meters, and we're pumping out about 17 cubic meters per hour. So with the first 17 cubic meters of air that you pump out, there is a 17% reduction in the pressure. And if you run it for another hour, you reduce the pressure by another 17%. So how many hours do you need to run this at, reducing the pressure at about 17% per hour to get down to the 1 millibar proposed running pressure of the Hyperloop, this is just for the airlock, bear in mind, about 40 hours. Okay, so it's clearly an inhuman amount of time, for people just to wait around for their 30-minute journey. So what we need to do is add more pumps. Well, let's get a feel for how many more pumps we're going to need. Turns out you add twice as many pumps, you roughly halve the pump out speed. So if you have twice as many pumps, it pumps down in 24 hours. Still not much use. If we add 40 times as many pumps, then we pump down in about 1 hour. And if we want to pump down in just 1 minute, we need about 2,500 pumps.
Virgin Hyperloop One's most recent fundraising effort secured $172 million back in 2019, at least $90 million of which came from a Dubai transit and port company called DP World. They're willing to contribute another $500 million in private capital to complete the project's first phase.
Yes, those were the airlocks, which, to get things in and out of the Hyperloop at a sensible speed, would require about 1,000 pumps per piece. Oh, and by the way, those are irises. They look nice in the video rendering, but are operationally ineffective as airlocks.
But hey, when the dream becomes a reality, when Hyperloop will allow us to live anywhere, work anywhere, and be anywhere, the costs will be totally worth it.
So sure, that's just an estimate that it's going to cost about $10 million for the pumps to pump this thing down in about a minute. And that's per airlock. And let's assume that you can get a few orders of magnitude saving on this. You're still talking $100,000 of pumps per airlock. But that wasn't the reason I was doing these calculations. That's just for the airlock. What about pumping down the main tube? Well, here, pumping it down quickly isn't so much of a problem. You can pump it down once in, say, let's use 24 hours as a benchmark. So for our airlock, which was about 10 meters long, that pumped down in about 40 odd hours. So we would need about 2 pumps per 10 meters of tubing to be able to pump it down in about 24 hours. So it's going to be about 200 pumps per kilometer. Or, just for a 10-kilometer track, it's going to be about 2,000 pumps like this running solidly for a day, just to get the vacuum, just to get the air out of the tube. And that's just for the 10-kilometer test track.
Certification Center and accompanying 6-mile test track.
What if you want to pump down the 1,000-kilometer Hyperloop that they're always promising?
Elsa, Tesla founder Elon Musk proposed this new technology called Hyperloop, and it's being developed right now in Playa Vista, here in this hangar behind me. On top of pylons is a hovering capsule inside a low pressurized tube, which can reach speeds of up to 760 miles an hour. So a trip from LA to San Francisco would only take about 35 minutes.
And that 1,000 or so kilometer tube would require something like 100,000 pumps like this, just to pump it down in a sensible amount of time.
And because it's strictly run on solar power, developers say it would cost passengers around $30.
And yeah, that's a clip from 2014, just to give you an idea of how much progress has been made on the Hyperloop in about a decade. It's now gone from LA to San Francisco for $20 to this.
Yes.
And this is where a little experience in actually dealing with vacuum systems comes in handy. With a well set up vacuum system, in principle, all you got to do is pump it down, close the valves, and you're done. Reality, it's not quite that simple. Basically, all systems leak in one form or another. And the bigger the system gets and the more components it has in it, the harder it gets to get a nice seal. I mean, literally, a failure on any of these seals and it'll take you another day or so before you can pump the system down again. Look, remember with our little example where we were going to pump down a 10-meter stretch or so? Well, that means that in the first hour, you reduce the pressure in the tube by about 20%. It goes down from about 1,000 millibars, 1 atmosphere, to 800 millibars, 0.8 of an atmosphere. You've taken out some 200 millibars of pressure. Well, for the last hour, You pump for an hour and you get down from 1.2 millibars to 1 millibar. That means that if your leak rate is to the point where you're leaking in 0.2 millibars per hour, then you can pump forever. You will never get a final vacuum lower than a millibar. And if it's slightly more than that, then your pumping system is inadequate to keep the Hyperloop at running pressure. So I'm going to make a bold prediction as what's going to happen next. In the absolute best case scenario, they're going to manage to get a pod up to maglev type speeds. And that's the best that they're going to be able to do with this test track, if they're lucky. If they build one that's, say, twice as long, they might be able to deliver the bullet type speeds. But all it takes is one tiny slip up, something falling off the pod or something like that, and it will rupture the tube. Or those lightweight tracks there will hit some sort of resonance and it'll end up in a cascade failure where basically you are the bullet being fired down a gun. You know, it's the sort of funeral where they'll have to collect your body with a squeegee. Now I'm going to guess that they'll never be bold enough to put people in when it's going at bullet type speeds. I mean, as it stands, their test went up to sports car type speeds, 100 or so miles per hour, and that was pretty shaky.
Yes! That was so good! That was awesome.
Today, the first people traveled safely on a Hyperloop. Tomorrow, Virgin Hyperloop will change the way the world moves with an on-demand, sustainable mass transportation system that connects cities in minutes.
Energy goes with the square of the velocity. When you go from 60 miles an hour to 600 miles per hour, you increase the energy of the vehicle, not by a factor of 10, but by a factor of 100. I just don't see those light rails holding it together with those sorts of energies, especially when you take a look at what the tracks of a maglev train going about half the speed look like. And believe me, this is merely scratching the surface of the problems with the Hyperloop. The full list is legion. Incidentally, you might be thinking that this Branson guy's a billionaire, just like Elon Musk with his own space company. Gotta be a smart guy, right? I mean, he's even got form for running a train company. Well, let me just leave you with this as a final thought. Branson's rail company, Virgin Trains, a few years ago was named the worst rail service. Let's just say hopes aren't high that he's going to be running a Hyperloop, which will be thousands of times more complicated anytime soon. And this is probably one of the saddest things about the hyperpaths, is they convince politicians not to invest money in decent, proven methods of mass transport, but instead to blow the money and invest in magic beans. So if you found that interesting, I'd be grateful if you give it a thumbs up, because you can be damn sure that the hyperpaths out there will give it a thumbs down. And please, please share this with other people. Let's make this the last time that we have a $500 million money-burning party. And of course, if you really like this video and want to support this channel directly, you can do it through Patreon. And I'll leave the links below. And thanks for watching.